Let's call the meeting to order for
Just
the.
1 second. Okay.
Make it official.
You guys,
I'd like to call the meeting of the Common Council of City of Plattsburgh Infrastructure Committee for December to order at 5:02 p.m. Roll call of members. Councilor Canales not here. Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Moore here. Councilor Rosenquist or Mayor Rosenquist.
Here. Got a promotion.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Okay, now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st infrastructure meeting.
Move. Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion's carried. Under environmental, draft resolution, attendance at the 2022 New York Water Environment Association annual meeting conference.
Motion.
Motion by Mayor Rosenquist, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion. Who's going to this? Who are you sending?
John Ron. And it is paid for, it's 1980, $1,980. Paid for out of environmental budget. And John can espouse the importance of this conference. You'll be attending.
So this is a conference I typically go to every year. Didn't go last year due to COVID. But it's the New York Water Environment Association annual meeting. It's usually about 900 people of utility officials like myself, regulators from Department of Environmental Conservation and Environmental Facilities Corporation and other funding agents, along with consultants and a variety of other water professionals. So it covers a variety of topics. Emerging contaminants, biosolids, resource recovery, energy conservation, regulatory issues, utility and asset management. There's a lot of technical sessions. I'm also on the board of directors for the Untitled Chapter. We have our annual meetings and strategy sessions there. So I have a formal meeting with other utility executives from across the state. Typically include the funding agents and some of the regulators with that. Those relationships that get developed are probably the most important part of the conference. Two things at the conference 2 years ago that occurred at this lunch meeting. One was presentation by Environmental Facilities Corporation, where they advised us that they were changing the WIIA program to allow municipalities to get grant money every year rather than every 5 years. What that did was it stimulated us into repackaging our $20 million worth of drinking water system work into 4 successive $5 million projects in the hopes of getting, instead of just $3 million for $20 million worth of work, it can get 3 and 4 successive years, which would be 12 towards the work. That and got a pretty good working relationship with the head honcho down in New York City. And when COVID started, they actually built a lab to test wastewater for the coronavirus. And based on that relationship, we were able to get all of our testing done for free. So that's a long story. Any questions?
Any other discussion? If not, proceed to vote to move this to the regular agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed. Motion carried. Discussion on the various project updates.
Beth, would you fire up the PowerPoint? I think it says project summary. We're gonna spend a lot of money on the water and wastewater system. I'm gonna give you a little update on the projects, where they're at, what we're doing, why, what's been done, what's in the process of being done, and what's planned for the future, along with a little bit of the financial context of what's going on.
Could we have a copy of this when you're
Yeah,
done?
sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
So, okay, next slide. Want to do the, from the beginning to the far left? That, okay. Now, down there, okay. I'll start with the drinking water system. There's 4 components to the drinking water system that we're doing work in. One's the source of supply, which is the, right now, the dams and the reservoirs. Put in, as you know, wells out there. Another component is the raw water transmission lines that bring the water from the dams and reservoirs or this new well field down to the plant for treatment. Third component is the treatment plant itself, and then there's the distribution system. Those are the 4 major components. So we've got work going on in all 4 of those categories. Real quick, our reservoirs are out Route 374 in the town of Plattsburgh. MEAD reservoirs are a big one. It's up Grand Hill Road. The Westbrook reservoirs are actually, there's actually 2 of them. It's called the Patterson Reservoir System. You can see the smaller one from Route 374, the larger one's tucked in the background.
Good job.
I'm gonna see pictures. We didn't even rehearse. Okay.
Hey. There's a line, man. There's a line.
So this is standing on MEAD Dam, looking at MEAD Reservoir. Actually looks a lot different than that, because we've drawn that pool level down to make sure we don't have any issues with this old dam or this spillway that's in use being replaced. Next, please. This is looking up Westbrook 2, the upper reservoir in the Patterson system. And then, I should say Westbrook 1. Westbrook 1's the lower reservoir. That's where we actually draw the water out of the center of the plant. Next, please. It's 6 miles from the reservoirs down to the treatment plant. So we've got transmission lines underground. They're typically cast or ductile iron pipe. Some are cement lines, some are not, but it's relatively large pipe that's bringing the water down to the plant so it can be treated. That's the main plant. It was built in 1936. Had an addition put on it in 1966, I believe, for the air base. And there's also another building called the 1956 building. That's the newer one. And that's built in it also. I don't have a picture of that.
Has anybody been out here? You been out there, Jeff? Been out there? Councilor Talon, you been out there? We get you a tour. It's pretty fascinating.
I didn't have any pictures of the distribution system, so I use this guy sometimes. System's old. So Mike and Andrew are in the process of addressing some of those issues out there. We do have some grant money that's flowing towards those projects. Thanks. Okay, so as you know, we're installing a production well, and the analysis or the reason behind this production well goes back probably 10 or more years. MEAD Dam needs about $12 million in order to replace the spillway OG and the spillway chute and to reinforce the 100-year-old dam. There's no grant money for dams. So we need about $1 million a year in additional revenue to cover the bond payment on the $12 million and the increase in taxes. This infrastructure is located outside the city. As such, it's taxed. We put a $12 million improvement into the dam. It's very likely we're going to pay taxes on $12 million additional dollars in infrastructure. When we built our water storage tank, it's exactly what happened. They said, how much did the tank cost total? And that was what the increase in taxes was based on. So $1 million a year would be about a 40% rate increase. And we'd still be dealing with a 100-year-old dam that's been improved, but bottom line, still 100 years old. So next slide. So along comes the drinking water WEIA program. It doesn't provide grants for dams, but it does for wells, it does for transmission lines, it does for plant upgrades, and it does for distribution system improvements. The WEIA program provides 60% grant of your total project cost, up to $3 million per award. So if you have a $5 million project, you're basically maximizing the amount of grant you can get. So when we initially applied under the WIIA program, we had $20 million worth of work because it covered all four of the components that we want to improve: source of supply, transmission, plant, and distribution system. In order to get enough points to qualify for the grant, that's what we needed to do. But since they changed the program to let you get the award every year, again, we broke it into four approximately $5 million projects. For what you don't get grant funded, the state also provides what they call financing, bonds. Worst case situation is going to be at their bond rate, which is usually as good or better than ours. Often they subsidize half the interest rate, give us a savings. If you qualify for hardship and your school project scores above the hardship funding threshold, you can get 0% interest bonds. When we first applied, we qualified for hardship, but we didn't have a point total high enough to actually get the 0% financing. So that was disappointing. So next slide. All right, so phase one is where we're at in the drinking water system. A few months ago, you authorized the award of constructing a production well for $483,000, 500 grand. And once that's in, phase one will include $1.8 million for a transmission line from that new well down to the existing transmission lines by the dam, so we can get that water down to the treatment plant. It includes $1.6 million for getting the power supply, the electric lines up to the new well, along with a generator to be able to run it if the power's out. That $1.6 million also includes a generator that will run the entire treatment plant if they're out of power. Plus, it adds a little bit of SCADA controls at the plant. The phase one also has $600,000 for asbestos cement pipe replacement. Those projects are in development now. So instead of paying $600,000 for it, or $8,240. The rest of the phase one are engineering and consulting costs. There's contingency, there's some bond issuance costs and maintenance fees that the state charges. All that totals $5.8 million. Next. All right, so we got a $5.8 million project, 60% grant funded, but it's capped at $3 million. So we've got $2.8 million left that we need to borrow. If we get to 0% hardship financing, that'll be $93,000 a year. If we don't get any subsidy and we've got to pay market rates, $143,000 a year. The infrastructure investment charge that we're presently collecting for what we call MEAD DAM, but it's really MEAD's source of supply, will cover even $143,000, I believe, with a little bit left over. One of the things we still need to deal with, though, is potentially $193,000 in taxes if we get assessed at an additional $5.8 million. I found there's some ability to discuss and negotiate what that assessment will be. Hopefully it'll be less. Typically engineering costs and those things aren't included in the assessed value. So this is worst case situation for phase one. And given the IIC and the positive surplus cash flow in the waterfront right now, it's really not going to be a problem covering phase one. Phase two, you might recall recently, you authorized submitting an application for WIIA funding for phase two. Phase two would include a second well, if we want. So more transmission line work, a major upgrade to the plant electrical system, which is pretty well shot and doesn't need code, and more replacement of asbestos cement pipe. This project totals $5.4 million with contingencies and engineering and all that stuff. If we get to $3 million grant, it'll leave us $2.4 million that we need to borrow. And again, we won't find out till later whether we get hardship financing, subsidized financing, or we're going to pay market rate for the bonds. Phases 3 and 4, more of the same. Wells, transmission lines, plant upgrades, distribution system work. If we decide that we want to pursue it, or if for some reason we're required or need to pursue it. Those are decisions for later. All right, any questions on the drinking water side of things? It's been a little I don't know if it's been confusion or consternation about why we're going to wells when we have a dam. That's the simple explanation. If you ever want to get into the 10-year analysis and all the details of the dams and everything, we got another PowerPoint we can file.
Hey, John, I had a question that somebody asked me, and I didn't know the answer. And that was, it's on our water bill, there's a charge for the MEAD Dam and WESTBROOK Dam, I think.
Correct.
What are those for anyway? Somebody asked me that, like. why-
Okay, so there's actually 3 charges. One's for storage tanks. That's for a storage tank we built about 12 years ago. That's to go to make the bond payment. It actually doesn't quite cover the bond payment, but covers it. They were collecting a charge for MEAD Dam improvements and WESTBROOK Dam improvements, because when those charges originated, we were expecting to replace the spillway at MEAD. We thought it was going to cost about $3 million. And there were some other little more limited improvements that were needed at the Westbrooks. So the MEAD IIC, Infrastructure Investment Charge, was developed to replace the chute at MEAD. Well, that chute replacement was designed, was put out to bid, and the bids came back with, between construction and other costs, would be $7 million. So we did some different analyses. We looked at other alternatives. Over time, regulations got more stringent also, and we realized that in addition to a new spillway chute, we were going to need a new concrete OG, and we were going to need some reinforcements to the dam itself. So the project cost then became $12 million. And needless to say, we started looking real hard at alternatives and started scouring the county for possible groundwater wells. Found another number of promising sites, went through a series of analysis of different sites, and site that looked the most promising was right in our own property near MEAD Reservoir to install wells. So a number of years ago, the decision was made to draw the pool level of MEAD down and start pursuing these wells, potential well field, and see how it goes. And if the wells work out, they'll be far less expensive to construct. The long-term taxes will be far less than on dam improvements, and we'll have all new stuff rather than still be dealing with a 100-year-old dam. So that charge initially was envisioned to be for spillway chute replacement, and it's called MEAD Dam on the bill. But over the last number of years, it's really been treated as the MEAD source supply project, and it's pivoted from fixing the dam and the spillway into maybe decommissioning the dam while we're developing a well field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it was for anticipated work, not paying off
Correct.
a bond that we on.
Right, which leads us to the Westbrooks now, which is money that's being collected. A smaller amount of work's already been done at the Westbrooks, but given the major lift that MEAD Dam and the well fields has been, that work's kind of been deferred off a couple of years. So that money's still being collected. That cash is being banked so that when the time comes to aggressively deal with the Westbrooks, we've got a little cash reserve there and the cash flow for whatever bond might be necessary to finish up the improvements.
Thank you.
Well, so that's drinking water in a nutshell. Okay, on the wastewater side, the wastewater plant goes back a lot for probably 10 or 15 years when the area where the wastewater treatment plant was an old rail yard, it was a marine salvage yard, it was a contaminated brownfield site. And at that time, the Department of State was pumping a lot of money into redeveloping the waterfront. So they provided money to get the rail yard out, to get rid of the salvage yard. Our brownfields program provided money to remediate some of the contaminated soil. But the Department of State also recognized that the long-term development of the waterfront to its fullest extent was going to be potentially severely limited by this wastewater plant, which is the biggest feature down there. It's a big, ugly, concrete, utilitarian kind of building that creates noise and creates odors. So the Department of State, back about 12 years ago, under the LWRP, provided money to initially do a feasibility study of how to mitigate noise, odors, and aesthetic impacts of that plant so that the waterfront can be developed. So did the feasibility study, went through public review, public comment, approval from the Department of State, all that. Then they gave us more money to take that feasibility study and start doing preliminary design work of the odor control upgrades, noise reduction measures, and architectural and aesthetic improvements. I went through the same process, public presentation from 10 years ago. I can show you if you're ever interested. And then it was finalized and basically stopped because the money dried up. So got this nice plan sitting on the shelf of what needs to be done when the time's right. Well, stars kind of aligned a few years ago, and we were able to take the feasibility study, preliminary design, and package it with all the other work that the plant needs, and submit a WIIA application under the clean water WIIA, the wastewater side, for almost $19 million worth of upgrades. And we were awarded the maximum grant, which is 25% of project costs, plus for the balance of what the grant didn't cover, they give us 0% financing for 30 years on the long term, but up to 5 years in the short term. So it's a potential of 35 years of 0% loans for the work. Empire State Development, ESD, also provided $758,000 towards the upgrades. So if you go to the next slide, I got ahead of myself. Okay, so all that work I just described goes into two categories: process and structural improvements, and earth mitigation projects. Next slide. So almost $19 million total. Basically $4.6 million in grant, a little over $750 for ESD, which leaves us a balance of about $12.4 million at 0% interest for up to 35 years. If you include the short-term financing. If you just run the $12.4 million at 30 years, it's a $413,000 year bond payment. The sewer fund has cash and surplus revenue to make that bond payment, so you're not going to see a need for any sewer rate increases in order to do $19 million worth of work. Next. All right, so the projects we have going on. $6 million basically has been spent performing concrete and steel structural improvements in the primary, one of the primary clarifiers, one of the aeration tanks. Plus, we also replaced all 4 bell filter presses, which take the sludge, squeeze the water out of it, so we can send it off to disposal. $6 million worth of work. We've been given reimbursed so far $2.1 million in grant and 3.7 on the 0% financing. So that project's all, the money we spent there is almost fully recovered, either through grant or the bond reimbursements. And we're winding that really down. We're in the process of spending $8 million on odor control improvements, disinfection upgrades, relocating the hauled waste discharge location so it's safer and more efficient. And providing secondary containment for chemical storage and deliveries. And that whole project is going to improve safety. It's going to have some odor reduction and will provide overall better performance of the plant. I don't have any real good pictures to show you that. We just dug a big hole and started putting some steel up. I'll show you a picture of what the building's going to look like in a sec. And coming in the near future, the third component of this grant and financing received is the improving the aesthetics or the facades. So the plan fits better with what the long-term vision of the waterfront is as it gets more fully developed. That was on a fast track under the last administration. We pumped the brakes a little bit because the Harborside Master Plan came along, and we decided to align the Harborside Master Plan with these architectural improvements because we want to make sure everything fits. And the master plan includes looking at building what's called an environmental learning center. And some of this exterior work can be used to create the space that environmental learning center could go with. You know, exhibits and all that other stuff would be funded separately. But so that's coming in the near future now that the master plan is moving along. So next slide. All right, so new belt filter presses that went in as part of the $6 million that's already been spent. Next one. Primary clarifier upgrade. New steel center column that was failing, plus 6 inches of the concrete was removed using hydro demolition because it was failing. Got a whole new concrete floor all around there, new steel. We're in pretty decent shape. Next one. That's just a close-up of that steel center column. Next. Aeration tank, a lot of the concrete's failing, chipping away and delaminating. So quite an amount of work went into this. This is rebar and getting ready to have new concrete applied to it. Next. This was a real dangerous situation. This is a catwalk over top of what's usually a tank full of sewer water. These beams, reinforced concrete beams, were failing where they meet the wall. Through expansion and contraction, they were moving. The beam was failing, the wall was failing, and they're getting ready to fall down. So that's been fixed. Next. All right, the disinfection building is going to house sodium hypochlorite to disinfect the wastewater effluent. So nobody, human or animal or otherwise, gets sick out in the river or the lake from the wastewater plant discharge. And it also houses sodium thiosulfate, which is added right at the end of the disinfection process to take out any residual chlorine. This is being built now. You can see it's got a little bit of architectural flair to it. All the exterior stuff we're doing now, we're trying to take into account how it's going to fit with this long-term development of the waterfront. Next. All right, so the exteriors of the building are something that's going to be designed shortly. There's 3 types: the west entry, the south facade, which faces the parking lot, the old rail station, and where there's a lot of activity on the waterfront, and then the north and east components. Next. So these are just possibilities. This farmers market is kind of right here. This is what a new entryway could look like to the wastewater plant. You see some curved roofs and some glass and stuff. It also provides a little bit of space to have this environmental learning center. This is a shot on the opposite side of that one. This is a glass walkway and an exterior walkway, which will allow people to, when we're doing plant tours, to bring them up on top so they can see the whole plant as it's performing. So down in the learning center, they'll learn about wastewater treatment, and they can go up on top of the plant and actually see it happening in real time. And hopefully get better appreciation for wastewater treatment in general, but also a better appreciation for the asset that the city of Plattsburgh owns. This plant's owned by the residents of Plattsburgh. It's worth in excess of $200 million. When it's referred to as the pool plant or the shit plant, it's all fun and games, but the fact of the matter is this is a critical asset. I think it's important for people to see it that way, so they understand how important it is in their lives and have some enjoyment out of the asset that they pay for. So, next. Just another shot, next one. All right, this is possibly what could happen on the south side of the plant, facing the parking lot and the rail station. Just some screens to kind of cover the inner workings of the clarifiers, but they're shaped in a kind of wavy form. Beef up the exteriors a little bit, kind of extend the life of them so they can last another generation or two, but also so they look a little bit better. Originally, this was a new motor control building that was going to be part of it. That was probably going to run $4 or $5 million at least, but we actually found a lot less expensive way to deal with the odors. So this part's gone. This won't change the south facade too much, but it did save us a bunch of money. Thanks. All right, and then a couple months ago, we applied for additional WEIA financing under the Clean Water. Y'all authorized an application and a bond resolution for $8.4 million worth of upgrades to the aeration system to make the application for the grants and the financing. They're hoping for the same 25% grant and 0% financing that we got for the original $19 million. If we get it, that'll be a $2.1 million grant at a balance of 6.3. In 0% interest bonds for 30 years, that would be $210 grand a year. And actually, cash flow is there for that too. Right now, the projection for end of year this year is that the sewer fund will have a surplus revenue of about almost $1 million. So we've got capacity for these projects and other expenses as they arise, but enough fund balance. Next. All right, so I thought it was good if we revisit how these projects originate and what kind of financial controls and constraints there are and what monitoring occurs as these large amounts of money are authorized to be spent and actually get spent. So first step is that I make a recommendation to y'all, hey, we should apply for this grant and financing. You approve it, and it usually includes a bond resolution that says, hey, we're authorizing spending this money. If we get the grant, if we decide to take the award and do the projects. It's not really committing any money to be spent, but it is an important first step. The grant's awarded, oh, great, we got money. We also have to, this body also has to authorize accepting that grant. So you would see that as a resolution. Once we accept the award and get the projects going, then have another authorization you need to do, which would be to establish a capital project and with the bonds being appropriated as the source of funds. Then from there, we do designs, we put things out to bid, we procure engineering services and all that, and you'd be responsible for awarding each individual consulting contract and all the construction contracts, if that's the work you want to pursue. If you award those contracts, then mayor, the chamberlain, and one of the councilors typically has to sign off on a purchase order, which then tells me, okay, John, you can go and tell these contractors or your engineering firm it's okay to do the work. And money then can be committed to spend. So there's 6 steps of council authorization before you get to the point where somebody like me, Mike, or Matt can actually spend or commit to spend the money. Even though a purchase order is issued, the work is then performed, a bill comes in, I would authorize it for payment, but it still goes to the Chamberlain's office for auditing and review, goes to the council for payment of the bills each week before money actually leaves the city coffers. So there's 6 steps before money can be committed and 7th step before it's actually sent out. So does that make sense? All right, I think that's it. One more? Okay. Any questions on any of that? All right, I know there's been a lot of money that we've been spending on these systems, and some people have some heightened anxieties and questions, and I think it's good to revisit all this stuff.
Just a one, not really related question, but have you had any supply issues with your chemicals?
Not so much with chemicals, but on equipment, yes. There are a couple of exhaust fans that take bad air out of the influent wet well and headworks area, and they both fail within a couple of weeks of each other. So we get a replacement fan, took months to get the parts to fix the other one, took almost as long. So we ended up taking the old fans that had been replaced 10 years ago, and our guys in-house rebuilt one so we could at least start getting some of that bad air out of there. Because it's a dangerous situation.
Okay.
But chemical-wise, no. When COVID first started, all the personal protective equipment was very difficult to get. Masks and gloves, and disinfectants and all that. But that seems to be okay. Sometimes getting piping, you know, it's all the equipment kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks.
Okay, item 3, public works discussion, various project updates.
Unfortunately, I don't have such a fancy presentation. I believe that Beth included your package. Mayor requested a list of our 2021 accomplishments and goals for 2022. We'll hit on the high points. A lot of these items, all these items, we've covered as we went throughout the construction season. But we'll start right out with road work. As you can see, we did pretty good this year. Originally, we had budgeted and based around what CHIPS money was available to us, was for about 6 streets. We got some real good news early in the year, but also what made us scramble around a little bit. The state not only gave us the 15% they cut, they gave us an additional 20%, which bumped our CHIPS allotment, CHIPS BWR paid New York up to 800,000 from around 590. On top of that, we got an extra letter which was mixed in the same envelope, and when I looked at it, I said, this is unusual. So I made a call to my friend at DOT, and he's like, yeah, we gave you an extra $2,036,000 for touring routes because of the state roads that run through the city of Plattsburgh. That money can be used very similar fashion to CHIPS money. The only thing we can't do with it is purchase equipment. Right away, Andrew and myself sat down. We had a list of streets. We tried to prioritize them based on condition, how quickly we can get to them, and also coordinate streets in the same locale to make sure that we got maximum efficiency for mobilizations. As you know, we hire out the milling and paving of our streets, but there is a tremendous amount of work the Public Works does, both prep work ahead of time, which would include rehab of all the drainage structures, the manholes, all the cleanup behind the milling, all the maintenance protection of traffic. So these are things that we had to line up and get ready to go. So we identified, I believe it was 16 at the time. You'll notice there's 2 more down there, Kogan and Don. They were separate projects themselves. Don Alley, Councilor Moore had asked about doing something. We patched that up the best we could at the season out of operating budget. But items 1 through 16 were all done with CHIPS, EWR, and Pave New York money. And Kogan Ave, for the construction of that is, I would say we're at 95%. We've got punch lists left. And we're speaking to Councilor Kelly earlier on, we're going to seek CHIPS reimbursement for a good portion of that also. I would say probably in the $500,000 range, which will help lessen the impact for the rest of the job. Any questions on the road work for this season?
I just wanted to comment on Kogan after everything got picked up and cleared off. Looked a lot different. You're right. I know you had mentioned that at one meeting, and yes, it does. It's pretty passable. It's pretty good.
And like I said, we'll go through the winter season. The contractor will be back to complete punch list items. There will be no more construction for this season. But yeah, and if there's anything that's not functional, we'll discuss it and see what correct back, particularly the intersection as it goes out. Second part is water work. Something we hadn't pushed a lot, in the past. And the only time we did water work, I say water work, I mean new water mains, service lines, was when we did full depth reconstruction. Took a little different tack, as you saw in John's presentation. He had in there money for AC pipe replacement, asbestos cement pipe. As you all know, we have all that pipe out the base, about 7-8 miles worth. It's not going to go away. I don't like going out in the middle of the night to fix this stuff. I know the guys don't enjoy it. So Andrew and I also made a conscious decision that every year we're going to start replacing some pipe. We're going to have to figure out where the money's coming from. So this season, if you go, we're going to attempt to get New York Road done. We're not going to attempt, we're going to do it. And then a section of South Peru Street. The next phase that John had on there, phase 2 would be Maryland Road. Those are 2 of the larger ones, New York and Maryland. The last large run would be Nevada Old. Once we get those 3 long runs done, then we're just connecting dots between the smaller sections. The good news is when the pipe is replaced, we won't have to worry about leaks there. The bad news is that we'll always find a weak spot. So leaks will start showing up in other places. Maryland Road is notorious, but they'll find other places in our city. So anyway, water line work, we did get a new water line at Kogan. Riley Ave extension, that was completed late in the season. US Ave before Brown, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Army Reserve Center, all the way over to Fort Brown, there is a water line that goes between the residential houses. That was an AC line and it's very deep. So we had an emergency repair to make there. We made the decision to go ahead and change that pipe out. I think it was over 300 feet. We did it with our staff in-house along with using the county contract to help us dig it because it was at a depth we couldn't handle. So that was a successful project and it's one of those ones we want to check off the list. So it was a good job. The fire hydrant program, John alluded to that last week at the council meeting. Flushing is something that should be done annually. But the one thing we haven't been doing is we haven't been flow testing. We did a comprehensive flow test of all the hydrants in the city with the exception of Lake Country Village on base. We did the calculations and now we're basically putting together a manual that gives us the updated flow rates for all the hydrants. And you ask why, it's the main reasons are fire protection, both for hooking up fire and trucks to it and also fire suppression systems. Last week, as a matter of fact, we had a developer come to our office wanting to know roughly what the GPM would work for the water lines in that area. And we're able to provide that information. So that was a good project. Sanitary, sewer, and storm. As you can see, with our road work, we rehabbed 291 structures. That's top end. That's anything from courses of masonry block to new frames, just to internal part. So we did a lot of structures this season. Moving on, building maintenance and improvements. Right off the bat, the new mayor came into office. We put in the heat pump units in the mayor's office, clerk's office. Those I know are saving us electricity. That's the way the state is pushing us right now, is in that direction. That money was all out of the IEP funds from MLD. Next was the RFP for the doors on the vendor building at City Hall. Years has not been functional. Now it is. Hopefully there'll be some of that space this year. Right now, I know that mayor's probably got something in mind for that. The Anderson building, which is a building behind the Craig Center, we got that taken out, cleaned up. And then the last thing we've done here on the maintenance and building improvements is we got rid of the north bathhouse, which we finished pulling the foundations last Friday. We just did some final grading today. And then also the old Coast Guard building at the old base marina. Miscellaneous items we've completed. Sailors Beach Bridge. I know people were unhappy. It was close to the season. Between trying to get the lumber and trying to get the time to do it, we finally got it done. The project came out good. It's back open. The south bathhouse at the beach, we went through, replaced all the damaged fixtures and all the flush valves, metering faucets, so that's 100% functional again. We do have the exterior shower fixture. It will be in for the 2020 season. The beach parking lot, we kind of patched that up the best we could. It's actually held up relatively well. Absolutely say. Item number 4 under miscellaneous. Something doesn't sound like a lot, but our yard waste policy and collection. Paper bags have been a success. Working extremely well. The phone calls and complaints are at a minimum. We're able to get around the city. The guys are not killing themselves anymore, and we're not wasting the time. So that was a big thing. I know the mayor pushed for it. We're all in favor of it. And very much appreciate the council's support for that.
It's also been a huge morale booster for our guys, believe it or not. They get very frustrated with carrying plastic bags open.
Yeah, you can get defeated, believe it or not. The yard waste.
After the day of stealing plastic bags.
Yeah. So the only complaints I think I've heard is the people that bought yard waste bags in bulk that have them, and what am I going to do with them? I don't have an answer for that, but that's probably the one major complaint. Other than that, the bags hold up good. There have been no extra charges for bags that got wet. because we're able to get around so quickly. And even the paper ones, we're finding they hold up for about 3 weeks really well. And we haven't had to charge anyone for bags being wet or not stable. Okay, we also did a bunch of research into feasibility for electric vehicles and grant funding sources. Not at this point in time, particularly heavy trucks, which is a good portion of our fleet, they're not affordable. To give you an idea, we got in touch with the head of Department of Sanitation for New York City. I say head of Department of Sanitation, actually the head of the road fleet. They have about 2,500 to 2,800 garbage trucks in all the boroughs. They tested a single all electric garbage truck. They performed perfect. The only problem is that single garbage truck costs $600,000. That's over twice the cost of a conventional. So unless we can get someone to maybe flip the bill for half of one, we're gonna have to hold up on that. But we will continue to research it as the technology evolves. We'll be ready. We do want to do some testing with some smaller electric vehicles. I think the building inspector has a couple in his budget for this coming year. Nothing is currently available that would fit our fleet, but when that becomes available, we're definitely going to investigate it and work on moving towards the electric vehicles. Project management, the PSAP grant, which actually is going to be bid on the 14th. That is pedestrian crossings that we did not get done this year because the bids came in on budget. Hopefully we get some better bids this time and get that project going for 2022. Survey base mapping for new water line replacements. As I spoke about, New York Road, Maryland Road, and South Peru Street. New York Road and South Peru will be for the 22 year. Other miscellaneous things we did, our dig tickets, we talk about it every year. We respond to 1,900 dig tickets so far and 165 emergencies. That means that we have to go out and get positive response to every time someone digs in the ground in the city of Plattsburgh near one of our assets. Shared services, this is something we want to talk about too. We couldn't get all this work done without help from other municipalities, particularly the town of Peru and their associated towns, would be Sable and Black Brook. They work a lot together. They provide us with trucks every year. We don't reciprocate, I believe, as much as we should. We go and mill for them. We do run trucks with them, but they're a tremendous help. The county worked with us this year. I think the town worked with us a little bit also. What we've done for some of these places, Andrew and Connor Filion, our drafts person, went and worked with the county highway department on their engineer, on their new survey equipment. We've done some work with our ground penetrating radar for the town of Plattsburgh, trying to help locate some sewer lines. We did some trucking for Peru, Clinton County Highway. We did milling and rebates for the town of Peru and town of Plattsburgh. Town of Plattsburgh actually at the New York Road crossing, I think this last week, the asphalt plant was open. Installation, catch basin, vac and jetting work for the county also. We gave them a handle some of that this year. So we're trying to work the best we can, take advantage of the resources they have and offer up ours in return. These are all things that we do speak to the mayor about anytime we go out and get his approval, just so we're not other projects. We had bike racks that we did this year, interpretive panels, new parking signs downtown. I believe we're about a third of the way through on those two-hour parking signs, but we are getting there. The bridge decks, the Smith Weed and the South Peru Street bridges, we did repair work on those. So those are the major things that we don't normally do in our day-to-day operations. I don't know if we want to talk about the 2022 plan goals or if we want to move on from that until.
I mean, some of that will also change.
Yeah, this is going to be in flux.
Why don't you just go over that quick?
We'll go over quick. Road work, we've got 9 streets scheduled for this season. Again, I want to gauge it. We have more in the can, we can always go after. But we want to see, number one, what are our final balances with chips, EWR, paved New York, and the touring routes. The big one will be if touring routes is a reoccurring program. If we get that extra $2 million every year, that would be a game changer. And a lot of these bigger projects, the Margaret Streets, the Beacon Streets, those will really help accelerate these things. So we don't want to overspend. So I'd rather give a more abbreviated list of 9 streets this coming season. Also, we found that this pushed our limit. Last year was it. We basically between, it takes a full week to do one cycle, about 3 to 4 streets. We had 4 mobilizations. That was 4 weeks out of the year that we paid. All we did was pick garbage and we paid. So it was pretty tough. And you throw in the festival, whether it be 4th of July, Battle of Plattsburgh, all those things, and then vacations. People like take vacations in the summer months. So it makes it's tricky. It's a balance. But like I said, we're set right at 9. We definitely could go more if we have the funding. We can add to it. There's always streets to pave. Everyone knows that. Lots of requests. So waterline work, definitely New York Road, definitely South Brew Street, Maryland actually should be on that. That's going to be for the following year. Sewer line work, we want to look into getting slip lining done on what we call the river run, which is along the Saranac River, which we have root issues with. And we're going to look at getting something going there. Sewer cleaning camera survey. This will be probably a summer-long project. We're going to send crews out, much like we did with the flow testing, where we stay on it throughout the season. It'll be a dedicated crew for sewer cleaning and camera survey work. The last time we went out, we did 26 miles of pipe. I'd like to do at least that much this time, maybe twice as much. That hasn't been done in several years. Storm sewer work. We're looking at rehab work on Ohio Ave. Hopefully, we can put something together there. And then this is the big one, and this is probably the one thing we whiffed on this year is sidewalks. The mayor asked us if we want to see the sidewalk work in Cornelia Prospect, which we've done with the PSAC grant. That's the one project we did not do. Just didn't have time to get to it, but that will be probably the top priority is sidewalk. ADA work, crosswalks, we're always putting in our protectable warning surfaces and any of those crosswalks that need work. Building maintenance improvements. I'd like to do another phase of the heat pumps here in City Hall. We're fast approaching, I think we're over 50% of the building, which is good. And then at our DPW building, trench drains and oil water separator design. We're buttoning that up right now. Refuse and recycling. We're looking to the implementation of totes as opposed to loose bags. Which will help, obviously, several things. One, I think we'll gain customer. Number 2, make it more efficient and quicker process.
Not only that, the aesthetic aspect of it as well.
Yes. Currently, you're allowed to put out loose garbage. As we all know, on any given day, you get a bunch of crows in it. It's a mess. Redesign of Margaret Street utilities. We're going to be working extensively with the consultant. I know Andrew. I say we. Andrew's going to be working with them, trying to figure out what we have in the ground there, what needs to be replaced, and how to help this. So there's going to be a lot of involvement. As far as what the end picture is, well, that's up to you guys. But utilities, what we have to live with, that's what we're going to be involved with. So, and then, like I said before, the electric vehicles, I'm going to continue just to keep my ear to the ground and try to find out if there's anything out there in the future that we should do.
Right, very good.
Thank you. Appreciate the work.
Thank you very much. Moving on, new business for anyone?
I would like to remind council and the public, hopefully those who've lasted this long,
that the Margaret Street redesign survey is out there. We have gotten significant traction on it, but always good to plug it a little bit more. If you haven't had an opportunity to take the survey, please do take the survey. It does help us in determining how the hows and the whats and whys on moving this project forward, which is again a significant project. And I really appreciate it.
Good. Anyone else? Any business? Not, we'll move to a public comment. I don't see anyone out there. There's any comments, so I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Kelly, second by Northwest. All in favor?